Wherever you'll find high prices, you'll find people saying that those high prices suck. Simple explanation for that, high prices do suck, especially when it's you who has to pay them. Now, when it comes to gaming, there's a lot of different things that people will point to for why the prices of older games are as high as they are, but one such thing is people online sharing their passion for games with fellow gamers. My goodness, what kind of monster have I become? Well, here's the thing about YouTubers raising the prices of older games. They do. There's no getting around it. Anytime games are talked about in a positive light, whether it be through message boards, articles, videos, word of mouth, you name it. Whenever games are talked about in a positive way, it increases people's enthusiasm for those games and makes them want those games, which makes them want to buy those games, which dips into that supply and inevitably leads to higher prices. So it may just be one of those catch-22 what do you do type of deals where if we want to have a retro gaming community where we can talk about these games, we need to be able to talk about these games. But perhaps it's not so much that video games are being talked about, and more so how they're being talked about. Some videos may just be a little too aggressive. For example, you might see a video titled something like, "The Top 25 Co-op Game Boy Color Games That You Must Have or Else You're an Idiot." I think it's definitely fair to say that people can be influenced into buying certain games that they wouldn't have bought without that said influence. For example, quick little story for you. I remember when Shenmue 3 was first announced, and there was all sorts of hype and buzz online. And I thought, I wonder what this is gonna do to the original Shenmue on Dreamcast. So I pop on over to eBay to take a gander, and what do I see? I see Shenmue for Dreamcast rocketing on up in price, going from about $30 to between 80 and 100. People are going nuts for it. And I think, Shenmue is definitely not a game for everybody. I wonder if they looked into this game at all, or were just like, oh, there's hype for this game, let's buy it. And sure enough, not long after, the price went all the way back down to around that $30 where it originally was, because people bought the game out of hype, and then when they actually played it, they were like, oh, I don't actually like this. And they sold it off, and the price eventually went back down to where it was originally. When it comes to YouTubers, typically the larger the channel is, the more likely they are to get scrutinized, because if a video is made that gets 1 million views talking about how some game is totally amazing, that's going to have a lot more influence than a different video that only gets, say, like 300 views talking about that same game. Smaller channels usually don't get blamed for this kind of thing. So by that logic, as long as your channel's small enough, then you got nothing to worry about. You can talk about games to your heart's content. But what if your channel does well and it grows? Then you should stop talking about retro games. What's a retro game channel if you can't talk about retro video games? What are you gonna start talking about instead? Bananas, that's what I'll do if I ever get to that point. Although, then I would just have the banana people after me, and believe me, you do not want to get on the banana people's bad side. Something that absolutely terrifies me is the potential day when somebody blames me for raising the price of Rocket Knight Adventures, a game that I love, and a game that I would always hope anybody who is interested in owning and playing an original Genesis cartridge could do that for an affordable price. But unfortunately, there's not much that I can do to affect the actual supply of the game, as nobody really can. And when it comes down to it, that's what makes this problem so unique to retro gaming as compared to modern gaming. When it comes to physical copies of older games, for the most part, we're just dealing with whatever it was that was produced back in the day, back when these games were current. Now, of course, there are some exceptions to this here and there. Certain websites will do limited kind of special prints of certain older games, but Sometimes those are games where they're not necessarily that hard to find. They're just popular games and they're just kind of meant as like a special collector's type of thing. They're not meant to solve the supply problem with some of the games that are harder to find. Although there have been some games that are harder to find that have been re-released like that, and hopefully that's a trend that continues. To which some of you might be thinking, whoa, whoa, whoa. If you go on eBay, there's all sorts of older games listed on there as brand new copies. Well, I hate to break it to you if you don't already know, but those are unlicensed reproduction cartridges. Okay, but the point that I've been leading to is that when the demand for retro games goes up, whether it be from YouTubers or what have you, it does not have a supply chain that can respond directly to it to meet that demand. Whereas for most modern games, they can, because whoever makes the game will just look at how popular the game is, look how well it's selling, see that people want it, and be like, hey, this is a game that we're still making, so let's just produce some more copies, and then the demand will be met that way. And when it's not, gamers are pissed. Now, earlier I was talking about people who are passionate for their games, wanting to share their passion for games. However, what if their passion doesn't seem very passionate? Something I've noticed that really rubs gamers the wrong way is when a game recommendation is given seemingly half-heartedly, where there's not much reason or explanation for why it's being recommended. It's just sort of, here's a game, get it. No, for some gamers, they want to know why they should get it, and depending how good of a reason is given, it just comes across as a lot more genuine, and they tend to have less of a problem with that kind of game recommendation. I think in a lot of cases when people blame a YouTube channel, it's probably a YouTube channel that they don't like, because when somebody likes a YouTube channel, they're generally not blaming them for much of anything because they enjoy the content. But if you don't like a channel and you feel like they're raising the prices of games, then you might just think, well, screw them, they're not doing anything for me. One positive thing that I'd like to point to moving forward is the increase in YouTubers talking about all the different ways that you can play these older games without having to collect them, because retro gaming is about so much more than just the collecting. It can be about the collecting, sure, that's a part of it, but it is so much more than that. And so the more we emphasize playing the games themselves and all the wonderful things that go along with this great hobby, the more that's going to do to make people feel like they don't have to just focus in so hard on the collecting aspect itself, and therefore take some of the demand off those older physical copies. But this is the part of the video where I want to turn things over to all of you and hear what you have to say. I don't have a specific question for this video, only because there are so many different directions that you could go in with this one, but nonetheless, I still really want to hear what you all have to say. So be sure to leave your comment down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah. And he's talking about video games. He's